pull request that we have created to basically made our driver class decoupled from the test, right? And also from the page objects. Let's see. Share the screen. Share. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let's go to Windows 4. GitHub. Repositories. Drone. And the pull request. Oh. Let's look at the driver class. Did I not approve this one? I thought I already approved the previous one.
Yeah. So after that, there were a few comments, remember, in the last session. So I created a new PR for that, and I just now noticed that you had added comments, so I updated that also.
Okay.
So just have to accept it. I think there will be a bit of conflicts between the two PRs, but
okay. Which one did you create first and which one did you create second?
Okay. This PR was first, but I did the commit later. Just like a few minutes ago, I committed this change.
Okay.
That you had requested for. But before that, I committed the other PR. Actually.
Okay. I mean, the reason I asked this is so you can, for example, create a branch in two ways. If you are creating the branch from develop, let's say if both these PRs were created from develop, and if they both are touching the same file, then you will have conflict.
Yeah.
But let's say if you create, maybe if you were working on this, the other PR, and then you create a branch from that PR, sorry, from that branch, then there would not be any conflicts because the changes are present in, both the branches. But let's see.
Okay.
Let's just look at these changed files.
But here I'm sure there will be conflicts. Okay.
So private static final string login URL, which is good. Okay. String username. This username dot send keys username, which is good. What is this? I don't know what is this. Okay. Seems to be. And Rashmi, I remembered about the thing that we talked, I think 2 or 3 sessions back, where I was saying that it might be actually a good idea to do driver.cat.login URL in the constructor. And the reason why I think it could be a good idea is because I mean, if you call this login page at this moment, you are passing the driver, you are trying to initialize the driver on a page, but there is no page, right?
Yeah.
So if we could actually first do driver.cat login URL, then you have a page, and then you're initializing the elements on that page. So
logically it sounds right, but it's not impacting the way the elements are initialized.
Yeah, because it's a lazy initialization, right?
Yeah.
So at this moment it does not find anything, but it does not complain. But actually, if you do this, then you actually have something that you probably can use in the test. I don't know if it does any sort of caching for this. I'm not sure. But it seems like a logical thing to do, that in the constructor, we first get the page and then we initialize the element.
Okay.
So,
Pramod, let's do one thing. Don't have a comment to this one. Let's close this PR.
Okay.
And in the other PR also it's the same, like in the same method I've called this .get URL. So in that maybe you can leave the comments.
Okay, makes sense. Cool. Okay. Login, and this is good. There's no space, which is fine. Okay, looks good. Any changes? Submit review. Looks good now. Comment. pull request is closed.
It's auto-merged.
Yeah. Now we are going to driver class for browsers. So interesting stuff. Just fine. Let's go to file change. So you added.
I don't know why this came up now. I was a bit confused.
Yeah, me too. Because you already had this, right?
Because this was already there, so I don't know when it went away. Because our test would never run without this.
Yeah.
So I don't know why this is considered as a change. So
let me see. I think I know why. I think I know. I think I know.
Okay.
So what's happening is in the previous file, if I expand up. So what was happening was in the past, in the dependencies, we said we want this dependency from GitHub Bonnie Garcia, but then we said the scope is only test. And now, since you want to use this in your page objects, right? And your page objects are not in test, they are in source. That's why it tried to add this dependency again. But actually, the only thing that we need to do is, so only thing required is remove this line. So if you remove the scope, then the next dependency is not needed.
Okay. I didn't notice this. I was really confused.
Yeah.
By this one. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay. Add symbol.
So this is what I was saying. I don't know what it means. Start a review or something.
Yeah, me neither. We'll try the other thing also. So for now, I just add a comment. Next time we'll save. Okay, so that was in the POM file. We changed 4 files, right? One was POM, driver for browser, login test. Okay, let's see what does the driver for browser do. So Stammer, Selenium, driver, Chrome, Firefox, driver manager, and let me see if I can in parallel see something in the project that I have. Just to be sure. Let's come up. Import statements. Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Driver manager. Yeah. So what I was trying to confirm was if you already have this, we probably don't need this. But let's see.
So these are automatically added because I use this line about get instance from setup. So then that import automatically gets added then. Okay. Without this part of Chrome and Firefox inside that get instance, that doesn't get recognized.
Oh, you use the get instance, okay?
I think you've done it in a different way.
Let's see how
there are different ways of using driver. Yes, it's a bit different. The driver manager dot edge driver dot setup.
Right. Edge driver dot setup. And
yeah, there are different ways. So just use
okay, which is fine. Private final web driver, public driver for browser. Maybe we can just call it, driver.
Yeah, I did initially. It was very confusing. Because in the other two classes also, I need to define the driver as well.
Yep.
And then it was getting a bit confusing, so that's why I changed it to this. But I don't know how it will work.
I think what we can call this is, let's in fact call it, and this is something which I learned from one of my Java developers, and he said normally The places where you say you request something and they provide you something based on the request, you call them as factories. So we can actually call this as, we can call this as a driver factory, which is also the name that you will see that
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah.
I think in the past I renamed something else, but that's what you suggested. Let's see what starter review does.
Okay.
Oh, then it shows it is pending. In the other case, it just showed as comment, but it did not ask you to start a
So what
review.
does it mean?
Probably this one is already visible to you. Maybe this
No,
one.
but if you see this thing also changed. It says finish your review and some one is there on the top right. This green button
Right.
that changed to one. I don't know.
Okay. Um, yeah, probably this is counting this as one because if I edit it, I'm just trying to see if it counts tasks as those things. Update comment. It's still one, right? So it's showing this as the review comment.
Just delete it, we'll see. It happens.
If I delete it, I think it will go away.
See that goes.
Yeah. So it's fine. Let's call it driver factory. Since it gives a class based on a request. Okay, let's call the task. And before that, maybe I just want to see how it is used in tests. Just a little bit curious. So let's see if you go to login test, import the browser, driver for browser. Okay, so this is something. So basically, your test should not know about the browser because I mean, imagine if you have, in this case, you have one test class. But imagine in a project if you have 20 test classes, then you have to define this in 20 places.
I understand that.
Now what I meant was in the past we discussed that we want to give it hard coded, I remember, but that hard coding needed to be done in the driver class. Because then even if there are 20 tests, you still have hard coding in one place. You know what I mean? In this case, if you have 20 tests, you have to hard coding in 20 places. So this, I mean the last time when we discussed, I was saying this hard coding for now should live in driver class because driver, maybe I should say driver factory class, because is it your neighbor's dog or is it your dog, Rashmi?
Sorry?
Is it dog yours or neighbor's? The one that is barking?
Stray dog.
Oh, it's stray dog, okay. So this should live in driver factory class because driver factory takes a request on what browser it should give a driver, right? So
Yeah.
and then you only need to change in one place, even if you have 20 test classes. And later, of course, we will try to remove it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Control X. Okay, so and then you say, give me a driver. Oh, just give me a second. Okay. So driver for browser. So we are initializing the So normally also in the factory, we don't, how should I say, we don't initialize a factory because factory provides something. So most of the stuff within a factory are static methods. You just say, give me a driver. And but that's okay for now. I mean, let's see if it works. But I'll just make a remark, right? Not a task. Normally in a factory, we ask for things which are static in nature, and we don't initialize. Where's it? Initialize an object of a factory. And maybe I should also add that using only static drivers in test classes is actually a bad idea, because what some people do is they define a static driver within the test, and that's a bad idea. For example, let's say if you have 4 tests, right? And if you keep your driver as static, so let's say you take a static driver. Yep.
Sorry, I lost connection for a minute, so I just joined back.
Okay.
But yeah, you just started mentioning that in a factory how we should work.
Yeah, so what I was saying was, number one, in a factory, we don't initialize the factory object. We just use things from it, right? So most of the time the methods are static. Now, just because a factory is providing a static method does not mean in the test also we should use a static method. So what we normally do is we take a static method from the factory, but we initialize like driver, and then you take the static method and put it into your that field, driver field. And the reason for doing that is, let's say if you have 20 tests, if you have one static driver for all the 20 tests, then you have a problem. Because let's say the second test finished early, it went to the after each method, and then your driver is closed. And maybe your third test was a little bit big and it is still in the process. So what you really want is a driver object or driver field per test, right? But because the way the DriverFactory works is, it says, if you ask me for a Chrome, I will give you Chrome. If you ask me for IE, I'll give you IE. So that means the way that method works, it is not dependent on the input from any of the varying field in the class, right? It's like it's a fixed parameter input, and it gives a fixed parameter output based on that. So that method can be static. But now these are more like optimization things, but I just thought it's good to mention.
Okay. I didn't understand this completely, but
that's fine. We'll cover that later. Yeah. We don't initialize an object of a factory. New. So we have.
Is there a reason why we shouldn't initialize an object there? Of these kind of. It's, let's say these are.
So I'm not really sure, because this concept was given to me by a colleague.
Okay.
What he told me was, normally factories, they take some inputs and they provide some things which are very static in nature. So they are not like your normal classes, like let's say an address class, or a cat class or an animal class, where each class can have different animal depending on how they're initialized with. A factory is more like you have a fixed set of inputs, and for that fixed set of inputs, I give you fixed set of outputs. But in a class, let's say you're an animal class, you can literally have thousands of variations, right? Depending on what kind of animal you want. The size can be different, the color could be different of an animal, the height could be different. But in DriverFactory, you are saying, okay, if you ask me for Chrome, I'll give you a Chrome driver. If you ask me for IE, I'll give an IE driver. So the set of things that the factory can provide are pretty limited. And because of this nature, we don't have to initialize an object, because, well, it's like the scopes are sort of limited, of what we want to give.
But how will you use a method from the class without initializing that as an object?
So that is done by creating static methods. So to use a static method, if you define a method as static, you don't have to create an object for it. And you normally use static methods for things which, let's say, does not change, or let's say maybe what I can do. A good example is what I read from the book, which I was reading when I had first Java. Let's say if you want to keep a count of how many objects are created from a class, right? So let's say you have an animal class and you want to keep a count of every time somebody creates an object from my class, I want to keep a count of it. Now there is no way you can keep a count of it by just defining some private fields, because each object will have its own values of those fields, right? And it will start with whatever you provide. So let's say if you provide a field called count, and if that field is not static, every object will start with, let's say, and if the field was initialized as 0, every object will have field count as 0. But if you define a field as static, then every time an object is created, and let's say in the constructor you can say increment this, increment this count by 1 every time the constructor is called. Now because the field is static, it will use exactly the same field, so it will only initialize the variable once, which is when the first person is trying to create an animal object, it will initialize it as 0, right? And then increment it by 1. Let's say if a second person comes in and they want to initialize another object from this class, this field is not initialized again. And because it's not initialized again, the counter can go high. And these kind of things, because they belong to the class and not to the objects, you can call them by calling the class. So you just say animal dot and let's say field name, and you will get the value. Similarly, you can create static methods and you can just say class dot method name, and you can get the method. And we will see the example, when we will refactor our DriverFactory class. We have some things, and we don't initialize an object of factory. We have some limited scope of things that can be asked and that can be provided. So we see a scope of improvement in our DriverFactory, and also here how we use it.
Yeah.
So add a review comment. Okay. Okay. So login and login. DriverFactory. So for example, this whole thing, when we refactor our class, could actually be done here in the beginning itself. You can say WebDriver is equals to DriverFactory dot get driver, and then of course our driver is not a normal method, it's going to be a static method.
Yeah.
Let's see. Then I think you also use I'm not sure if you have to make your WebDriver final here.
Yeah, so this was as part of the comment that I got in IntelliJ, so I also wanted to ask you why should we define this as final. It just suggested that it should be a final.
Oh, you mean the solar lint? Do you also have this solar lint thing?
Sorry.
So there's a plugin called solar lint, which gives good suggestions. But anyways,
so this was one of the warnings that you get, those errors and warnings, right?
Okay.
This was one of the warnings, so I just
okay. Well, let's see. Private
Actually, for introducing the driver class, there is no change here at all. It's all that username.
Oh, it's only the username in this.
Earlier.
Okay.
Because I took this also from the branch.
Okay.
So that's why I just made it. So there's no change.
There's no change here. Okay. So let's go to DriverFactory. So what we normally want to do here is in this factory, here is the place where you want to say for now, here is the place where we say what browser do you want, right? At the same time, let me put some more remarks. At the same time, it is not concern of DriverFactory to know the browser choice in its own class. So thus we know, uh, this line should not belong here, right?
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, and should come from config, whatever the value is defined in config. Okay. Okay. So browser. So for example, this one, this can become this method can be a static method because it does not depend on any field variable in the class. Yeah.
But it is depending on the browser value that we are sending.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at this moment it does, and it might feel like, oh, this statement is not correct, but it is still correct because you don't need to have that value as a field variable. It can actually be even within the method because how should I say, once you pull that value from the configuration, that value does not belong to the class. That value does not change. It's coming from somewhere outside.
But how do you pass it without sending it as an argument?
So you can actually use it. You can actually use it between this line. So this line where you say this is the method. So let's say in the future you can have one line here above the browser. So a line above here can say either get the value of browser from config.
But don't add it here because anyway, for now, before we finish the resolution of this year, we are not going to do that, right? So that we can take that as an it looks like there's something.
No, it's not a task. It's not a task. I'm just making a remark that, for example, or you can also add the line to define the browser choice above this switch statement, right? Because it's not a field.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry, not this. Added just a comment. Control X. Cancel. I'll just delete it. Delete. And I'll just make a comment here. Oh. I think once I start review, then every comment is taken as, Okay. But you know what we talked here. WebDriver Manager, get instance of Chrome. So if this was Chrome, you get an instance of Chrome, try with new Chrome driver, get instance. Okay. Driver is equals to new Firefox driver. Actually, this is just slight improve. Travel the destiny Firefox driver. Driver get driver. What is this? So this is the constructor. So we are passing the variable in the constructor. Yeah, but we don't have to do that because, well, we don't want to initialize this, right? So
Yeah, I got it. So that one change will make all these changes.
yeah, but did I mention?
Like you said.
I'm not sure if I mentioned that comment here about the constructor because we want to get rid of the constructor
Yeah.
and we want to basically move all this logic in this method.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, so we don't want a constructor but just a method that gives you the driver, right? That returns driver.
Yeah. So we
And without taking an argument.
no, I think you're right. We want to
Because
get
you just said we could just define it inside for now.
right. You want to get rid of constructor.
Yeah, the way I was thinking about this is like you said, it's a class that takes some argument and returns the driver based on the argument. So that's totally based on that.
Okay, get constructor and move this logic in our below method to get driver. Okay, add review command, and then we know, for example, that our get driver method, we don't have to pass an argument to it because it knows since this logic is going to go in the get driver, right?
Actually, the reason why I wrote a separate method called getDriver and only return here is in our test there is also this after each annotation, right, where we are going to quit or close. Then if I call this whole method, it doesn't work. Like it again initiates a new one and then closes. So that's why I had to make this as two separate methods. One where I'm just defining this driver as new based on the browser, and another method which just returns the driver.
I'm not sure if I understand, but let's look at the file.
So let's assume that you put it inside one method, right? Where we're initializing the browser and also returning the driver.
So we're not initializing it. We are going to create a static method. So
sorry, when I say initialization, I mean that line of drivers with the new Chrome driver.
So we will do it. We will do that one. For example, we will do that one here. So we will here say like driver is equals to DriverFactory dot get driver. That's it. So this is going to be a field variable, for the test class.
This I understood. Yeah, this I understood.
So then then the after each problem that you're saying would not occur, right?
No. See, you are saying come down to the driver factory.
Yep.
So here you're saying all this will be in one method called this is not driver factory.
Driver for browser, right?
Yeah, driver for browser. Yeah.
Yep.
So here if you scroll down.
This is the last.
No, wait, scroll down. This last part. Yeah. Here you're saying even this part about the switch case that I have, that will come under this method, right? Get driver method.
Correct.
Yeah, my point is if I do that and then at the I think this will work. Sorry. It's all right.
Yep.
I got it. Yes.
Okay. So this method becomes static since everything it needs to know to give a driver, it knows, right? It does not depend on a changing field value to change the output. So it becomes a static method, which is also good because in our test, if we have 20 tests, and in our example we have 4 tests, right? So each of these tests will get this driver by By each of these tests will get the same static driver, right? So the driver was initialized once, but each of them have their own copy of it. So that means closing one does not affect another because this is not static. If we make this static, if I say WebDriver, if I say private static WebDriver driver, and then if I give this, then we have a big problem. You know what I mean? It's like this.
But even now that problem is not there, right?
No, now it's a static.
Even now each of the tests,
if I make
without
this,
making these changes,
yeah,
the way it is, even now all four tests are getting their own instances of the driver, right?
right. But the only thing is, every time you call the constructor, this class actually works like as if it does not know what to do every single time a request is made to it. But actually it does. And it only need to do those things
But
once.
it is called only once in all the tests because our setup in the
No,
although we have four tests.
It's called 4 times here. So every time you make an object in the test, this thing is called, where is it? This thing before each. I mean, even if it was not in before each, even if it was before, it was called 4 times because you're creating a new object every time to create a driver. You know what's happening here, Rashmi? It's something like when you create an object, it goes on, let's say, on the heap.
Yeah.
And
I understand.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that so because it's there in before each, anyway for every test this is getting created like it has its own instance of driver, right? So that issue that you're talking about where it might happen that one test.
Oh no, that will not happen. That issue will only happen if, let's say, we make this as a static web driver. So for example, if I call it as private static web.
Anyway, we are not planning to make that static anyway. So I'm just trying to understand why you are giving that comment.
Well, the reason why I'm giving this comment is, let's say if you're working in a project, it is not uncommon to see in some code sample somebody making it as private static web driver driver. And the reason that they will give to you is, hey, it's the same driver that you want to use. Why do you want to initialize it multiple times?
Okay.
And if you don't know why you should not, and if you agree to it, then you will have flaky tests, and you will not know that the flaky tests are because of this statement.
Okay. Because I got confused that the way it's written now is already creating the issue.
Right. No. So it was not a remark on what you did, but it was more like, a pitfall to avoid in a future project.
Yeah.
So let's go back. I think so if you make this static, since everything it needs to know to give a driver, it knows it does not depend on changing field, so it becomes a static method. And then probably what we can also do is, instead of giving the return statement in the end, for example, here in the case statement we are saying, okay, if this is the case, this is the driver. If this is the case, this is the driver. But I think the way the case statement works is, it will, if there's not a break or a return statement, if there's not a return statement, I mean, even if there's a break, if there's not a return statement, it will still go through all the cases, right? Till the end.
Why? Because it should break here, right? Why will it go through? That's why we give break. If it gets into the scroll case, then it will break out of it.
Let's just clarify this, because maybe you're right, or maybe I'm confused. Java case statement using break. Let's see. Okay, so when Java reaches a break keyword, it breaks out of the switch block. This will stop the execution of more code and case testing inside the block. When a match is found and the job is done, it's time for a break. Makes sense. Cool. So this will work. The way I think I was handling it was by giving a return statement just here. That, once you get an instance, just return the new Chrome driver. And
then, even I had done that in every case I've given return, then I thought why why duplicate? So I thought let's just take it outside.
Okay.
But,
I mean, whatever you like. It's both are fine with me.
yeah.
Okay. What else? So I think the formatting of default maybe got a little bit messed up, but you can check it. Minor thing.
Yeah, then I was trying to put it back, but it wasn't. So I don't know why. Then I thought maybe that's how the format.
Well, if I look at the example that I have, it seems.
You have the same. Yeah. I tried to because it just looked weird. It was automatically formatting like this.
Okay, but this is a minor thing. You can just check. You can just check if IntelliJ allows you format it correct. Okay, so I think this is good, Rashmi. I mean, this is good progress with this. Now you've already separated at least, but not yet because I think our test is still aware of.
Yeah. But after, if I work on the
Yeah.
format that you give, then it
Right.
will become browser.
Right. Exactly. So then our test does not know what browser we are talking about. Our page objects does not know what browser we are talking about, which is how it should be. And then the only one who not even knows, but who just cares about whatever comes in, I will give you something, is this driver page. So once you make this change, I mean, there's one more thing, one more kind of driver that you can have, but I think that we can cover in the future, and that is a remote driver. So you can really have only two kind of drivers. So you can either have a remote driver or you can have a normal driver. But since we are not going to use remote driver now, there's no problem statement for it. So we're not going to solve a problem, that we have not yet encountered. So for now, this will do. And after this, then we will try to do the next logical thing, and that is to basically move our choice of browser from code to config. So that would be a new thing to learn. Good progress. And I think the good thing is you might also be learning that, about how to keep things separate, what belongs where, what does not belong. And that's a very important concept in all this. Because in most of the online examples that you will see these concerns are mixed up. And because they are mixed up, it results into a lot of code duplication. Like, for example, if somebody would have implemented the test class the way you have implemented now, if he has 40 test classes, probably he has Chrome somewhere, Firefox somewhere, and then his tests are not flexible anymore. If he wants to have a CI with all tests on even I, cannot do that. Cool. So I think this was good progress and good topic, and maybe.
And I think this also helped me to, like I told you, I really struggled a bit initially because in my head the idea was clear, but somehow when I started implementing it, I don't know, it got very clumsy between these three pages, like the page object model and the test and this driver class.
Yeah, because you try to understand how do we use this, right? How do I use one in another, right?
More than I think what I learned was I was trying to just figure out different things, and without understanding why something is needed, I was just trying out things. Like I just thought, okay, this construct, if I create this constructor class here and method here and another one there, it should work somehow in my head. But I was not really thinking where is it taking from the flow, right? Like where the test starts and from where is the driver coming, and then how are we passing it to the login method and all that. Instead of clearly thinking about it, I was just trying out things, and then I kept getting errors, and I was just solving errors without understanding the flow or the concept, what I wanted to do. It's just that I wrote some few lines of code, and I got some errors, and I was just trying to solve those errors. So it got really very bad. So I had to delete 2 versions and parallel. I know this is a very simple thing, but I struggle.
No, I mean this is. I mean nothing is simple. I mean it's like simple is what you know, right? What you don't know is not simple. It's like the kind of things that I struggled. For example, I was saying, right, the fixing things in Docker Compose file. For a Docker architect, that's simple because he knows it, and now it's simple for me because I know it. So don't worry about that. But I think you also brought up an important point, which probably I should also touch upon, is how does the you said how does the flow works, right? So maybe I can give an example. Just from a purely separation of concern point of view, I mean, if you think about it, why should we even be talking about driver in a test class, right?
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, I should say, give me an object of login class, right? And I want to only talk about login. I don't want to talk about, for example, this where is it? This web driver. There is.
Yeah.
For example, when you create a web driver, you have this import, right?
Yeah.
And conceptually, you can say, why do I need to even talk about web driver? I only want to talk about my application. So I want to talk about having a login object, and I want to talk about only having this imports for JUnit because I want to assert things, right? Anything else I don't want to talk about. In fact, this was the approach which I took in the beginning. So what I did was my tests were only talking about the pages, and they were only having imports for JUnit because that's all I needed for doing after each, before each, and assertions. And my driver was initialized in something called a base class, which you will see many people use. Even some of the best instructors, they will tell you to, put the driver in the base class, which actually is a very bad idea, which I figured, I think when I was down the line 2 or 3 months in my project. And I'll tell you why it is a bad idea. So let's say if your application has 10 pages, right? And if all of those 10 pages are like simple, like your login page, where you have like 3-4 fields and that's it. If all those 10 pages are like this, you can have a page object model where you put whatever you need in each page, and then you can have a base class which can, so you only have one page object at any single time that you're dealing with, and then it's no problem. But in reality, in your complex projects, you will have pages which are pretty complex, which will have pretty complex business logic, which are doing a lot of things. In that case, if you have only one page object class for that particular page, it will be a maintenance nightmare for you. Number one. Number two, you will find that there are a couple of things which would be common in multiple pages, right? For example, things like headers and footers and couple of other things, even menu items, they could be common in each of the page. If you follow a page object model, you will have duplicate code now lying in 10 different pages, correct? Are you with me, Rashmi?
Yes, I'm back now.
Yeah.
My connection was unstable.
Oh, so did you hear what I said?
Yes, I got to know that why we cannot handle everything in one page object model.
Right. So then you need, so normally what you will do is for each page class, if let's say you have 4 or 5 or 10 different sections, you actually want to create 10 different section classes, right? Which all together constitute a page class, and maybe all of those 10 sections have something in common that can live in the page class, the parent page class. But what this means from and this is good from an object-oriented point of design, because in Java, let's say if you say you want to have a bathroom class, you are not going to put everything in the bathroom, right? You might have a separate class for tub, you might have a separate class for toilet, you might have a separate class for bathroom, and your bathroom is basically composed of all these different sections. So what it means is when you will start writing your test, you will not just have one bathroom class. You might actually be working with a tub class, a bathroom class, a toilet class, a wash basin class. You get the point, right? And what that means is, if each of these class are getting their driver from the base class, all of them are initializing their own driver. And that creates a problem. Because what you normally want to do is, you are saying, okay, first go to the wash basin class, do brush, right?
Yeah.
Then the same person now needs to go to the bathroom. Not another person,
Yeah.
the same person.
Yeah.
And that means you need to have a common driver instance for each of these page objects.
Yeah.
And that means that common driver page object has to live in your test class. That is the reason why we use a web driver in a test class, even though, I mean, from a pure how do we say, separation of concern point of view, why should a driver live in a test class? The reason why it should live now is because we have a bunch of page objects we want to deal with, which needs the common driver to navigate from step 1 till step 10.
Yeah.
That's why. So this is also another pitfall that you might encounter in a project, that people will say, hey, this is not optimized. Why are you having WebDriver initialized in 20 test classes? I can just do it in one test class, in the base class. And it might seem like a good idea, but it's a bad idea. It will not scale. It will not work. And you will have lot of other problems. Cool.
I have two couple of questions. So, one is regarding this only. So when I'm using a different class, right? Like in my test, I'm using both login page class and also the driver class. So is it correct to import that way? Like if you go to the import statement in my somewhere?
Yeah. So now normally what I do is where is it? Oh, in the test class.
Not here.
In the test.
Test.
Where is it?
Yes, here. That com.source pages login. Is that right to do it this way?
I mean, you did not even
have,
you did not even have to write it, right? It would have just directly come.
No, it came automatically.
It came automatically.
It suggested automatically.
Which is good, because probably you have a setting which says import all the needed class automatically.
Yeah.
If not,
but that's right. This is how
it has to be. You have to give basically the full package path, which is goes like this, and then the class name. Only with static methods it becomes a little bit different. So for example, with static methods probably you don't get the whole class. You only get, for example, some static methods, and if I see, you can actually find for example these ones. This is a method, right? Or is it? No.
Yeah. No, that's an annotation.
That's an annotation. I thought parameterize this. These are all static methods, I think, from this one, for example. This is a static.
That's for the driver.
Yeah. Import static, and then you're just importing, for example, this assert equals.
Yeah.
This is a static import. And then you're not importing the whole assertions class, but you're only importing the assert equals equals test. In all the other cases, you're actually importing the whole class.
Yeah. Okay.
And if something shows red, you can actually, if you do Alt Enter, IntelliJ will tell you.
Yeah. That's what and another thing that I wanted to check with you was about not related to this. But when I was working on this, so what happened was, like I said, this was the third time where I succeeded. So first two times I created a branch, from Develop. And I started working on this assignment. And then, like I told you, it got extremely confusing and more like spaghetti stuff. Like I was using everything from everywhere.
Right.
So there was I could not just simply go back and redo it. Within that, so I just wanted to get rid of that branch without pushing it.
Yep.
So I didn't commit anything, I didn't push anything. I just deleted that branch.
Okay.
And my idea was that I'll delete that branch and take a fresh copy, pull a fresh copy of the develop branch, and again start working on it.
Right.
But when I do that in the develop, it is still there because my files are already stored in my local. So even when I went back to develop and checked it out, like when I tried to git pull, it said everything is updated, so I can't pull anything. But these changes which I didn't want were still there.
So the way it works is, I understand your question. So let me see if I can help you with this one. So let's say you are on, and for some weird reason, my IntelliJ is also acting up. So for example, here, right? We are in this pom.xml. Or maybe let's take something else. Let's take this test.ps1. Here I'm saying this was a line that was before, right? And now you messed it up, right? And now you are on this branch, feature dockerized drone, right? And then you have this branch and you're like, hey, but I don't want this. You went ahead and deleted this branch. Maybe I should create a branch. Maybe I should do that. Get branch, fix some branch, right? Get checkout. But you want to do it from develop, right? Just to see exactly how it.
No, exactly. This is how I.
This is how it is.
Okay. Branch.
Okay.
Okay. I made some changes.
Okay. Yeah. So you have. So let's say you have checkout, fix some branch. So now you are on this some branch, right? You made some changes and you feel like, hey, this is not what I want. I want to delete this. So you go to your develop branch. Let's say I do. Okay, because now
I had to go to my, I had to check out my develop and then delete it.
Yeah, because otherwise you cannot delete this branch. You cannot stay on the branch. So normally it tells you to basically save these changes. Otherwise it will not allow you. If you have a new file, so let's say if I create a new file, let me show you something. So this is a new file, new file.txt. And if I say I'm not interested in this new file to see in develop, but it doesn't matter. It will still show up, and I'll tell you why. It will still show up. So we have two files that we have changed. This new file and this existing file. Now if I try to check out develop, it will stop me. Get check out develop because it says your local changes to the following files should be overwritten, which is Docker Compose. In the Docker Compose YAML I have made some changes. Okay. Let's see. Docker Compose YAML. Communities. So let's say for now I'll just say I will stash these changes. I'll just say get stash. What stash does is it takes a copy and stores it somewhere, so that if you're interested to see it again, you can go back. But for now we changed two files, the test ps1 and the new file. And if I just wanted to git checkout develop, I can delete the branch, get branch delete, fix some branch, fix some branch. But your question was, what's happening is, for example, this new file, this will show up, right? The reason why it is showing up is because it was never version controlled, never version tracked. So it is just sort of lying in this repository. You understand what I'm saying?
No.
If this file was tracked, then it will not show up. But because this file was not tracked in Git, it's an untracked file, U. The same goes for this test ps1 file. The reason why all these changes are showing up here, because it's an untracked file. And every untracked file, Git does not care. You are in branch A, you are in branch B, it does not care. But if I try to do something, so let's say let's make a new branch, right?
But my changes were on all the tracked files only.
Yeah, so then let's see. So if I say get branch fix my test file. And if I check out this, git check out my test file, let's go and corrupt some test file, right?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Let's go to IntelliJ. Drone, we are in git branch, we are in my test file, and in the ugly login test, I'll just say at the rate test, public void, no one interested in this test. And when you're saying, for example, assert true, assert true, true, for example, that's it. But now if I go back, we have a change on our branch, which was in the test class.
Yeah.
Let me refresh. By the way, this is also something that I want to get rid of it, maybe in the next assignment, Rashmi. We have not yet added either so in our git ignore file. I think we don't have the right ignores to ignore all this mess. But I'm wondering, something weird has happened here. It's showing me all these changes, but not my test file, right?
Yeah, I can't see that.
I think my project is a little bit corrupted, at least in VS Code. I saw this yesterday also.
But maybe you can just tell me what is the right way.
So normally, let's say if you do it from IntelliJ,
yeah.
Let's go back to terminal. So we have this class, but now if you check out, so now you're not committed it, right? Just wanted to go back to develop. This will not show up in develop. If it allows you to check out develop. So switch to develop, then you should not see this test. Git check out develop, switch to branch develop. Yeah, that's weird.
That's why then you know what I did? I deleted my project on my system and then closed the repository again from GitHub. Then I thought that should not be the way.
No, that should not be the way. That should not be the way. But this is weird. I don't know why this happened. I think probably because I corrupted my project. Because normally, if you have certain changes on a branch, it should not show up on another branch. So if you
what I was thinking was when you do git pull, right? Like what I used to do is I deleted that branch after checking out develop, but I did a git pull again so that I can get the latest from the repository.
Right.
And it said nothing is there is nothing to change. Everything is up to date. But I think that when it tries to pull these additional files that are already which are saved now in my local, so they will still remain, I think. And that is why I still see those new files and new changes.
So when you
now try to do git pull, now you have checked out develop, right? Just do git pull and then we can see this on.
Your local changes to the following files will be overwritten. So now it's saying these changes will be overwritten. Please commit your changes or stash them before you march.
But if I don't want to,
I mean, then you cannot pull. It will not allow you to pull because then it does not know. For example, you have these changes, right? And maybe somebody else wrote something else here, and then Git would not know what to put where.
Yeah, but I haven't done any change in the develop branch. Right? I did my changes only in some like my branch, which is not develop. Now I'm trying to pull develop. So then why is it showing me?
What does it show you?
This please commit your changes or stash.
Yeah, it should not. I mean, I think that's what I'm saying. I think the project got corrupted or something. It should not happen like this.
Yeah.
Because if you are
not corrupted, because for me it's the same thing is happening. These changes I can still see the develop even after I check out the develop branch. I was I was able to see those new files that I created in that other branch which I deleted.
So new files you can, because they're untracked.
Okay.
So I don't know if this is not untracked. We are working on this file, right? So this is pretty tracked. But the fact that this tracked file, oh, it's here. Okay, login test. No one interested in this test. And if I go back to so this should not happen. What's happening right now?
Okay.
Because it's a tracked file, I can write whatever I want to write in one branch and it should not show up in the other branch. I mean, I cannot, how do I say, I cannot show this in record, but you can see it. For example, in my project, let me see, I can pull it up. So let's say I'm on a branch. Get branch, and I'm on this branch, fixed Docker files, right? So now these Docker files are, let me show you something. So we have in test, so we have this Docker file and we have this Docker compose file, right? In version 3.9. If I check out git checkout develop, I'm on the develop branch. If I go back, you see?
Yeah.
Version 3.7. It is not the same.
This is what I was expecting. Yeah.
And this is what it should work. That's why I'm saying this. Something wrong has happened with that project.
Okay.
I don't know what, because this is how Git works, and it's like I'm using now Git from at least consistently from last 2 years. So this is the first time I've seen this kind of issue.
Okay.
I mean, of course, if a file is not tracked, like we saw an example of new file, you go to any branch, it will show up because it's an untracked file. Okay. But for a file like this, which is tracked, which is modified, you should only see the file in the branch. And in fact, when you're trying to make a switch, it should tell you, hey, you have unchanged, you have to stash them. You have either commit them or stash them. And let me show it to you quickly by just going back here. And let's say if I come here, git checkout, and if I do this, paste. So now I'm on this branch, right? If I do git branch again, I am on this fixed Docker files branch. Let's say if I just go and let me refresh, we go back. Where is it? These are resources. Yeah, here. So now if I click on this Docker Compose YAML, it's version 3.9, right? And if I say, adding a top level comment, right? Now this is a tracked file. I've not committed this. Now if I want to check out, it will tell me either commit or stash. Git checkout develop. Look, local changes would be overwritten by checkout. Either change, stash, or commit. And if I do now, let's say git stash. Now these changes are stashed. And now if I click on this branch again, you don't see the change anymore. You see?
Yeah.
Because it's stashed, it's gone. And now I can, if I go back to git checkout develop, no problem. If I click on this file again, you see version 3.7.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know what's wrong. What we can do is maybe we can first try to. I already have some changes, but I think I already have it here as well. So I was working on this branch to Dockerize our project in drone, but I also have those changes elsewhere, so it's no problem. What I will do is I will first delete the project. Let's pull it from remote. And the first thing that we can do is let's also try to ignore all this, the garbage that is cluttering us. If you want, you can create, or if you want, I can also create that PR.
What do you want me to create?
A pull request where we can ignore all these things which we are not interested in. Basically, any file that we are not creating in source, we are not interested. If it is target, if it is .intellij, .idea files, all those files, we're not interested. Yep.
And Pramod, just one more thing.
Yep.
Can you please delete? So there was one branch that you created at parallel execution, and later you asked me to work on it so that I also get an idea.
Right.
So it's already done now. So this branch I don't think we
let's just do it right away from here. So you mean this add parallel execution, right?
Yeah, that one.
Let's see if we can delete it from. Code.
No, I think it should be here. When you list down the branches.
Yep. From here?
You don't have an option. Oh, okay.
I think I already deleted some. Oh, if I click on overview, then I can. So you want to delete this one, right?
Yeah.
Delete. Okay.
Cool.
Anything else?
No, it's all fine. So based on your comments, I'll work on the comments for this year so that we can understand.
Cool. Okay. Making it more and more cleaner, right?
Yes.
Nice. Cool. Awesome. Okay. Take care, Rashmi.
All right.
Chalo. Take care.
Yeah.
We thought to make a small session, but we ended up doing the longest session.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not problem. Chalo.
All right. Take care, Pramod.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
Okay. See you. Bye.